Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For this week's video I am going to be assembling a laser cut wood diesel house. It's Monday morning now and the kit arrived in the mail over the weekend, so let's open it up and take a look. There is what the structure is supposed to look like when it's done. It has motorized doors. There are a lot of bits and pieces in here, and I need to familiarize myself with everything and get a plan together. So let me just go through all the parts and I'll check in with you again later. Well, it's been a few days since I recorded anything down here, but I now have the required power supply, which is the necessary 12 volt DC 1 amp. I got it online from Walmart, about $5, but I had to wait for it. I couldn't get anything in the local store because living in a small town they tend to have less of a selection. And the first thing I'm going to have to do is cut the connector off. Now I need to bare the ends of the wires so that I can connect it up to the engine house. Well, I've just put a test meter on it, and yes, it does conform to the standard of the white stripe being the positive wire. So now I can hook it up with assurance that I'm not going to short anything out. Okay, it's sensitive. Actually, I'm going to put all the electronics away in the knowledge that it works. And the other thing I want to get on with today is to paint the walls. I don't want to go too heavy on the paint because I don't want to fill the mortar joints. I think that's enough on that. Let me just figure out what colour to paint everything else. I decided to start on the roof details. I'm building up the 4 skylights. There's only a few pieces involved in each one. There's the window frames, which are on laser cut wood with a very thin backing on them. There's peel and stick parts. And then there's a couple of end frames, and then the sheet acetate supplied for the glazing. And although there are no instructions with the kit, the order of construction that I've determined works best is to start with the window frame, to peel. I'm peeling the backing off one side only so that I can still use the other side to hold on to, because there is quite a lot of stickiness on this glue. it's very difficult to hold and be able to let go afterwards. I've cut the glazing slightly short just to give myself a little bit of tolerance. Once it's on, I can just press it down, and that's going to be stuck forever now. Finish peeling that off, and then put another one on the other side. Have to make sure I leave a small gap in the centre, otherwise I won't be able to bend it. I've already found a couple of these end slots have the excess wood still in them and has to be removed, but that one was good. In fact, that one is fitted in a lot more easily than some of them. The laser cutting on these is absolutely perfect, meaning that there's absolutely no tolerance whatsoever. Actually, I think they're too perfect, because it makes it difficult to assemble them. I've already discovered that I'm going to have to open out these slots a little bit on the roof. Well, that one's okay, but the first one I tried to put in, it buckled the glazing. But that one fitted perfectly. It's 3 down, 1 to go. I've now got all the roof details assembled. I've got the 4 skylights, which are temporarily in place, although they're not glued. And I've got these 8 roof vents. I'm not quite sure what kind of vent they're meant to represent, but they're put together from 3 pieces of laser cut wood. There's I guess it's the fan of some kind. There's a washer light bottom piece and a disc that goes on the top. Well, that's the roof finished. Now I'm going to start on the walls. This morning I came down here and attached the glazing to the inside of the wall with clear part cement. Now I've got to install the frames. These are laser cut on a thin laminate of self-stick material. Well, I've just finished installing all 12 of the top windows in the 4 walls. A task that took over an hour because every one of the frames was slightly too large for the opening and I had to file them to size. But that task is now done. Hopefully the bottom windows are going to fit right in because there's a lot of those. So I'm going to turn the camera on. Well, all 36 windows have now been installed. Most of the lower, smaller windows went in perfectly with little or no filing, and I'm quite thankful for that because there was a lot of them. So now I have 4 walls and a roof ready to continue building the structure. Now, I know I have to leave the roof removable. And the concrete trim is also from the same material as the window frames, but that doesn't go on until after I've assembled the building, because it covers the interlocking corners. Well, I spent a few hours yesterday getting all the sub-assemblies together. We have here the 4 main walls with all the windows installed, the roof with all its detail parts, the 3 floor sections, light bars and the door tracks. Well, yesterday I got some of the main pieces glued together. The roof is still detachable and it's going to have to remain that way because that's what I was asked to do. This is what the engine house looks like at the moment. I was wrong earlier. I thought the floor sections were made too long, but it turns out that the error was entirely mine. I had them in backwards, and this tab here goes around the front wall in the width of the doorway. But it only took a few minutes to rectify it, and now I'm ready to continue attaching the floor. And with every piece that I add, the structure gets a whole lot more rigid. Once all three of the floors are glued in place, I think the structure will then be rigid enough to be able to press on it to attach the concrete trim. Well, it's been a few days since I've been down here. I've been busy on a layout design. Anyway, I did have an issue that I had to resolve. The shelf that's supposed to go in here to support the door mechanism was missing. So I've had to fabricate some pieces to slot in here. You can see the outside of one in the hole there. And it just about fits in between them. There's just enough play for me to get it centered. Before I install this, I need to do the doors. The doors attach via 3 little screws on here. They're weighted to allow them to fall down straight, and they run in these slots down here. Before I install them, I'm going to put the decals on them because it'll be a lot easier to do it on the flat. Well, it turns out that what I thought was decals was actually just sticky labels, so they're even easier. And it seems to be working fairly well. And the cut-offs seem to be in exactly the right places. And the very bottom of the door doesn't even get to the roller, so I didn't even need to slit it with all separate sections. So I'm going to call that good. Those doors are working very well. I don't think I'm going to permanently attach this just yet. I'm going to work on some more bits and pieces. For the process of installing the concrete frame overlays, I decided to work upside down because the fit at the top is going to be a lot more critical than what's at the bottom. The bottom can easily be hidden with ground cover, whereas the top, any imperfections there is always going to show. So that's why I'm working upside down. And since the sides are designed to fit inside the ends, I started with the back wall. And the trick there was to use my fingers to feel on both sides, because I can feel when it's symmetrical, and then I just put it lightly in place so that I can move it if necessary. I put those 2 side pieces in just to make sure that it is indeed centered. And now when it comes to installing the sides, I have positive location. I can just butt it right up against the trim that's already on the back and know that the position is going to be perfect. I need a knife point to help me in separating the layers, pulling the backing off. I think it's interesting how the manufacturers made this kit. They've got all these cutouts, all designed to be hidden behind the concrete frame. Quite ingenious, actually. not pressing heavily, I'm just making sure that it's in the right place before I burnish it in place. And I'm happy with that fit. So now I just press it down all over. And then I have 2 more sides to do. And then this is going to make it look a whole lot more finished than it did before. So I now have the concrete overlays on all 4 sides. I wasn't happy with the fit in the corners, they didn't meet quite perfectly. So I've filled all the gaps with Tamiya putty. I've let it set up, and now I'm just going to sand it off to make it nice and smooth. It's a fairly light grey colour, so I might not even need to repaint it. I've got to go around with fine sandpaper and be really gentle because I don't want to be peeling off the overlays. This might take a while, and it's not something I'm going to risk rushing. So I'll just turn the camera off and I'll check in with you again later. Well, it turns out that I do need to touch it up because where I've sanded the edges, the black base colour of the materials is showing through. So I've mixed up a bit of paint from, this is granite grey and this is white. I just mix the 2 together until I get somewhere near the original concrete colour. It doesn't have to be exact since the building is going to be weathered anyway. It's probably going to take me 2 coats to cover it because in certain areas I have now sanded off the primer. So I have to carefully go around all 4 corner pieces, get everything touched up. It was going to be necessary to paint the top of the coping anyway. And now I'll do this all in one step. Well, I've been picking away at this build for, off and on for a few days now, and it's finally come together. I believe I have now installed all the supplied parts. I've still got to get some weathering on it. That wire eventually needs to come up through the floor, but I don't know which side he wants it, so I haven't cut the hole out yet. Yesterday I put the interior lighting in. At the moment the wires are just temporarily twisted together. I'm going to cut them shorter so I don't have this big bird's nest in there. And I've got to find a way of getting some screws in to hold this mechanism down so it doesn't flop around. I don't want to glue it because you might need to take it out for some reason. I also have some paint to touch up where these tabs came through, but that's only going to take a few seconds. Now all I have to do is weather it. I know he wants exhaust stains up the front of the engine house where locomotives have been going in and out, and my thought for that is that the bottom few feet of the door would be stained, as would the wall above it, but the rest of the door would still be clean because when it's in the up position most of it would be protected in the roll, so it wouldn't get dirty, or as dirty. Well, I've just added some soot stains up the front wall, as I said I was going to. I used my weathering chalks, and I deliberately kept it subtle. I didn't want to go overboard. I did find that the chalk didn't really want to stick to the shiny labels. I think that can easily be explained away
by saying that the railroad owners regularly clean them off for safety reasons. And I think a subtle effect is better than too much. So I'm going to send a picture to the customer and see if he likes it. See what else he wants me to do to it. So don't go.
Well, I sent some pictures off to the customer and he likes it just the way it is. It's going to represent a fairly new structure on his layout. So the weathering will be limited to just the subtle exhaust stains up the front by the doors. So all I have to do now is pack it up and get it mailed off. Let's bring in this week's video to its conclusion. Hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. I hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.